Welcome to this week's video. We're continuing our series, Can We Talk About This, or can we just address topics that seem to be big issues that nobody wants to talk about? And this one's pretty significant, depending on what statistic or whatever it is you're reading. This is the number one or the number two reason for divorce. And that topic is money. Money, just the idea of how much do we need, how do we spend it, who earns the most, all of those things. And it is significant. I think it's a big deal. I know people whose marriages have fallen apart over this very issue. Not necessarily just this issue, but somehow kind of related to it. And so I think it's important to address it. Scripture does not directly address marriage and money. It does not say the husband needs to be the one that handles the checkbook or the wife needs to be the one. It's just kind of there. But Scripture does teach a ton about money. And interesting enough, Jesus himself taught more about money than he did any other topic, either that or hell, one of the two. But he spent a lot of time talking about this because it is a big deal. There's scriptures where it says, where your heart is, or where your treasure is, there your heart is. And if money and having a lot of it, or whichever it is, having that status symbol is a big deal to you, it can become a master in your life when the whole time it should just be a tool. It should be something that does not have mastery over you. But we all say we want more money, we need more money, but exactly how much? I read this study a while back, and I'll try and post it if I can find it exactly. But essentially what it says is that when they were talking with people who earned everything from, I think, like, poverty level all the way up to, multiple six figures, when they asked them how much, the aggregate number was like 23 or 24%. It was oddly specific, but it was this consistent amount that we all think we need just a little bit more. Most people are not content with how much money they have. And so it's a struggle. And I think Jesus knew that. So money, I think it's a big deal. When I think about money, and there's, I know our country has a bunch of billionaires and, nearing trillionaires and all that, but I think about Warren Buffett, such a fascinating creature, not advocating for or against him, but Warren Buffett is fascinating in that he's lived in the same house he's owned, I think, for 40 years now. He still drives by Whataburger, or not Whataburger. He would if he lived here. He lives in Omaha, Nebraska, but he drives by McDonald's, and if he has one, he will use a coupon to buy like his little meal. And, there's a lot of people obsessed with the efficiency and, making the absolute best use of all of their time. And you have this guy that's worth billions of dollars, one of the greatest stock investors to ever have lived, to recognize patterns and trends in the economy, both domestically and globally. And this guy still takes the time to drive himself to McDonald's and buy this. He could build one in his office place. He could hire the greatest McDonald's cook and all the equipment and do it, but he still takes the time. And so what I think ultimately, like his example, what it means for us is, I think that if you make your life entirely about money, at some point, it's going to fall apart. And like I said, I'm not advocating for or against him, just a fascinating quirk from somebody like that. I think it's important to look at money as a tool. I think it's really important to look at it kind of like, all right, where do I want to see myself in 20 years? Where do I want to see my marriage? Where do I want to see my kids and my generation? The book of Proverbs talks about generational wealth and this idea of being able to like pass it on. And I think it's important. And I think if you want to get to that point, you certainly have to be wise with your money and spend it in the correct way and invest it and allocate it and budget and all of those things. But I also think it's really important that if you don't fight the urge to make it everything, it will become destructive. And I think really in our culture today, we struggle a lot with, image, and we struggle with, keeping up with the Joneses and all that. And because of social media, we see everyone's highlight reel. And so when we see somebody buying this or building this or having this or going on this trip, I mean, we don't see the blood, sweat, and the tears and the sacrifice they made to go into it. We also may not see the debt that person is incurring to get to this point. And so specifically back to marriage, it's extremely important to understand what your disposition towards money is. If you're the saver, then that's great. Hopefully you marry a spender and you guys balance each other out. Typically in the relationship, there's always one saver and one spender. Two savers, I guess, would just be, would be saving everything, and we would have to struggle to go and spend. Two spenders, that's dangerous. And I think regardless, we all need good financial advice. Find a financial planner, find a person that can help you manage your money. There's a lot of automated systems, but within the context of marriage, I think what happens is if we're not careful, it will money and the pursuit of it can become the director of our lives, and your family and the marriage dynamic can become this thing where it's tied up in trying to make money, or have a certain status, or achieve a certain rank within society. And if you're not on board with it, as a couple, it will destroy your couple. And that's typically when it talks about 50% of marriages, or whatever percentage it is, that end in divorce because of financial reasons. It's because they're not on the same page. A certain person wants to save, wants to have the security, wants to have this foundation, this nest egg, and the other person wants to have fun with it and be frivolous, and that's dangerous. And we need to balance each other out. But if you're not on the same page, it's just going to drive an enormous gap and an enormous just a wedge between you guys. Within scripture, Jesus talks a lot about generosity and being generous and giving. And you see in the in the New Testament, people giving to church plants and giving to support Paul and other missionaries as they kind of do their work. And we even have that today. And I've never met a person that doesn't want to be seen as generous.
But sir, Christmas is a time for giving, a time to be with one's family.
I say bah, humbug.
I don't care.
We all want to be seen as generous. We all want to be seen as people who are willing to, give their money away, willing to trust and invest in other people, and even willing to trust that God's going to take the money. And that's why we as a church, it's tithes and offerings. That is how we make it. But you can't be generous if you don't organize and plan your life. And if you take the tithe as kind of the standard, the idea of taking 1/10 of your income and giving it to a church and giving it to mission organization, whatever it is a big deal. Most people could not kind of do that. But even as my wife and I have walked through this, we've been married for 13 years. We did it even when we were dating, of tithing. We look back, and that's just the way we look at it. We look at the percentage, and then we automatically move the decimal point over, and that has always how it's been. And we've had to manage our lives around that concept. So nobody doesn't want to be generous, but it certainly happens where if you're looking at your bank account, if you're looking at your checking account, you're thinking we can't give, our lives are going to fall apart. It's because you didn't plan ahead. So it's a big deal as a couple. You also just need to learn to set goals together, whether it's buying a house or going on a vacation, buying a car, saving for kids' colleges. Wife and I are kind of just in the midst of that. Even though our kids are young, we recognize that my son's going to graduate high school in 11 years or so, roughly. And then we're going to be on that trend. And whether he goes to college or trade school, military, whatever it is, we still want to save in the fact of being able to help them, because the reality did not happen in our lives. And it has been a difficult journey for us, but we're grateful for the lesson that we learned along the way.
The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it.
Another interesting thing about money is, sometimes you have people that it's their obsession. It was the way they were raised. Family of origin plays so much into this, whether you were raised with a lot of money and there's the expectation of it. So you want to have a lot, or you were raised with a lot of money and you hate it because you saw what it did to, relationships in your family. And so you reject it, or the opposite. You had none, you want more, and all of that. And so it could be the rejection. Some people think we're moving towards a utopian society where money won't exist. And that, I don't think that that's kind of ever going to happen. I don't see it working out well. Obviously the other end of it, just kind of completely unregulated greed is certainly dangerous, even just within a person's heart. And so, if you are a penny pincher, if you want to invest and kind of leverage everything and put your family's, financial safety at risk, if your spouse is not on board with that, it's going to be so destructive. You're going to sow discord. You're going to sow distrust. and that's going to lead to, just a really, scary and gnarly situation. So you just have to get on board. This is why I think too, just from when you're dating, learning how the person spends money. My wife and I broke all the rules. I mean, when she moved here for college, we were 19 years old. We started sharing a bank account because the way that the school dispersed scholarships and student loan stuff was they basically would pay for housing and tuition, and then later in the semester, everything else. So we had to share money, and I don't recommend that. I don't think it's good, but we learned that you have to be open and upfront, and so even though it's a struggle for both of us, we've learned to make it work. We've learned really just kind of like what fears are associated with it. I think that's a big part of it, is people, once again, how you were raised, once again, what you were taught. I mean, in many regards, right? I didn't learn about taxes. I didn't learn about mortgages. I didn't learn about all of these things in school. Not that it's necessarily their responsibility, but I certainly did not learn about it at home. I don't really even know what the financial philosophy would be within my family, but it's ignore it and pretend like it's just going to go away, which it doesn't. And it also doesn't work that way. I think also apathy, it's interesting too. People can look at money. Jesus says the love of money, what's incorrectly said all the time. The love of money is the root of all evil. And in fact, the scripture actually says the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And so really, Jesus just recognizes that our hearts are always bent to wanting more. Amazon Prime and free shipping and 2-day shipping have ruined us. And even though it's a blessing and it's kind of a great thing, it still is a problem, because what we end up doing is, thinking that we don't ever have to hold back. And if I wait 2 days, that's me exercising self-control instead of going out and getting it. And that's dangerous. And this is not a good way to live in general. There's a fascinating story, which I think, has always interested me. And a lot of people resonate with the story when Jesus clears the temple. There's pictures of it. I'll put it up in this video. But there's pictures of Jesus, drawings rather, there were no photography back then, Jesus went into the temple and saw what they were doing, and so fashioned a whip and started whipping everything and turning over tables and driving them out. And a lot of people, that's Jesus's, taking down authority, or kind of whichever, and it is. But the ultimate context is, back in the day, the way that you worshiped God is that you would bring an animal sacrifice as an offering. And so all the way from the lowly little pigeon, all the way up to, like a prized cow of a certain age, and kind of all those things. So what would happen is people would travel in from all over the place, and they probably didn't want to, if they couldn't transport or didn't want to transport animals, they would pay for them. They would buy them in the temple. And there were money changers. And I see, whether it's, converting different currencies or just charging like interest, they were basically making a profit off people's attempt to worship God, which is a huge problem, a huge danger. And so when Jesus comes in and clears the temple in that way, that's why he was doing it. He was clearing it because the love of money, the pursuit of money, the obsession of money was getting in the way of people worshiping God. And I think ultimately that's what it can be, is that if we love money more than ourselves, if we love money more than our spouse. I mean, Jesus said you can't serve two masters, mammon, which was this representation of prosperity, or God. And it seems intense, but I know within my own heart, that's how it is. I know, reading stories and looking at culture, locally and abroad, it's just how it is. I mean, it's amazing what people do in the pursuit of just trying to get a certain status or get a certain amount of money. And so my challenge is for you within your marriage, is that you would get on the same page financially, figure out where you're at, and then fight to be on the same page, so that you do not find yourself at odds with your spouse, and so that you can eventually get into a position and create a life that is honoring God with your finances. You are able to be generous. You are able to save, not just for yourself, but for your kids or even your kids' kids, all the while trusting God with it, holding it with a open hand, so that God can use you, and that you can know that God, in his love and mercy, he gives and he takes away. So that is my challenge for you guys. Thanks for watching. Pray you're blessed and encouraged. We'll continue to do these, but I pray you have a great week, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye.